welcome. This is our fourth edition of our Spanish and Portuguese Business Network speaker series. And we're happy to have Richter joining us again today to talk about establishing a family office. We have, and I'll introduce them shortly, but we have Tasso and Justine here from Richter, and we're looking forward to having them participate with us. Today, I'm going to do the introduction, and I'm going to give you a little evolution. I didn't actually time myself, so I'll be looking at the clock and make sure I don't go too long. So, okay, I don't have any planned notes, but I know this in my head since I've lived it, and so I guess as a kid, I grew up. I grew up a lot of my cousins lived in TMR, and we lived on like right around Van Horn and Victoria, and so my cousins were always going on Christmas vacations, and when they turned 16 they got a car and all this stuff, and I guess I was a little bit I guess maybe motivated to one day be able to participate sort of in the good life, and so I was pretty entrepreneurial as a kid. In high school in CEGEP, we used to wash windows. We called ourselves Sunny Skies Window Washers, and I put an ad out in the TMR Post, which was a local TMR publication, and I'd go to the I think it was a Steinberg's at the time, which became a Provigo, and I put this little poster up and you could pull the thing off and it'd have my phone number. Anyway, we were busy. Like, it was myself and actually Emil Shiri, the two of us did that in the summers, and we did well. So I was always entrepreneurial, and I knew I wanted to be in business. So how things started was my dad had a small business working out of the house, and I asked him. I said, Dad, I was in university. I said, Dad, like, should I join your business? And he said, well, to be honest, it's really too small. It hardly makes enough money for me to live our lifestyle, and I really wouldn't be able to afford to pay you anything. So I was actually considering a career in real estate and in real estate development, and I actually bought a land in Hudson 40 years ago. And just as a side note, during COVID, we decided to actually build something on it, my eldest son and I, and we built it, we sold it, and it was very successful. But I never ever went into that sort of career path. So what happened was that things started sort of just in a lucky way, where I was going to Toronto to meet a friend, and I told my dad, I said, why don't I make a sales call at Canadian Tire? So he says, sure. It was only selling in the Montreal area and only selling to small jobbers and stores and whatnot. I mean, so one of the products he had was electrical tape, black insulating tape. And so I just called up Canadian Tire, asked for the buyer that buys electrical tape. The guy actually answered his phone, which would never happen today. And he gave me an appointment. So I went there. I didn't have a business card. I had a couple rolls of tape with me. And I was just in the right place at the right time. He asked me to fill out some forms, which I did. And he said to call him the next day. I called him the next day. I remember being at the Eden Center at a payphone, and he says, "Oh, I've got an order for you." I said, "Oh, wonderful." He says, "I'll take 60,000 rolls of the 66-foot tape and 40,000 rolls of the 33-foot tape." And I'm like, "This is amazing." We didn't have the stock, but this was amazing. Anyway, I called my dad. I was like, Dad, you won't believe what happened. I got this order for 100,000 rolls of tape from Canadian Tire. So we were all excited. Anyway, we were able to work with the factory that we contracted out for these tapes, and that started an interesting relationship with Canadian Tire that grew over time, and that was my lucky break. And so then I said, well, you know what, I'm gonna join the business, and I'm gonna, you know, try and make it work. So we did that. I grew the tape line. We got all kinds of insulating tapes for electrical use, and then I got agents across Canada, which are, you pay them a commission, and they typically have other product lines, electrical product lines. They might have wire or boxes or whatever it happens to be, and they had our tape, and they would sell it to electrical wholesalers. So we actually grew the tape business, you know, to a nice degree. And then I was looking for something else, and somebody suggested light bulbs, and like, light bulbs, I thought that's like GE and Sylvania and, you know, Westinghouse. Like, does anyone else sell light bulbs? And they're like, yeah, of course. And they said, well, there's this company in Ontario, and they're really difficult to deal with. And so they gave me their catalog. So long story short, that's how we got into the light bulb business. So I started in the light bulb business in roughly 1984. The tape business, when I got involved, was in 1982. So we grew the tape business for 2 years, got into light bulbs, and actually it was a great opportunity. And we grew very quickly in the light bulb business. We grew in light bulbs, and I would say before LED disrupted the light bulb business, we were the second largest in Canada. So Philips was the largest, followed by us, and behind us were Osram, Sylvania, and GE. And I'm talking in the professional market, not because we do not sell to big box retailers. So we chose not to support that channel. So and with a roughly 26% market share. In the mid 90s, I started a lighting fixture company because we were exclusive distributors for a large Japanese lighting company, and most of their distributors were really more in fixtures than they were in light bulbs. And so I did a sort of a world tour of their distributors in the early 90s, and I decided, you know, we're going to get into the lighting fixture business too. So we did that in the mid 90s, and at first I had combined it into one business, and then I separated it because I realized that the fixture business was very different than the light bulb business. And so I brought in professional managers to run the fixture business, and they grew the business very, very nicely. They did actually a startup business in the mid 2000s, as a sort of two kicks at the can, in a sense. So two brands operating in the same channel, but with a similar product offering. And then that company was called Stan Pro Lighting Systems, and my main business was called Standard Products Incorporated. And we grew. We got into ballasts, we got into sockets, we got into the lenses and louvers for fluorescent style fixtures. So we really became almost a supermarket of lighting components and light bulbs to the electrical industry. And then in the around 2003, we stopped growing, and I realized we were only growing through product expansion and not through market penetration. And so I decided that we would switch gears and focus on not drop the product expansion, of course, but to really get focused on penetrating the market. And so at the time, we were pretty much aligned with these agents, as I mentioned earlier, that were taking our lines into the market. So starting in Quebec, we decided to go with our own salespeople, and our growth was really explosive. And so then I did the same thing in Ontario, and so on and so forth. So eventually, over time, we moved away from these commission agents and we went to our own direct sales force. And we were close to 35 salespeople, plus sales managers, covering the Canadian market. And I remember many of our customers saying, you have more salespeople than GE, Philips, and Sylvania combined. And so we were really able to penetrate the market. And one of our value adds was the energy saving retrofits. So where we would go into a building and convert them, say, from incandescent or halogen to or old style fluorescent to more energy saving fluorescent products. And the ballasts were magnetic. We went to energy saving electronic ballast, and so we were able to upgrade lighting in all these facilities and save them money in the same time, and they'd end up getting a payback on their investment within 2-3 years typically. And then LED hit. And quick history on LED is that there was a Japanese company. So LED has been around for a long time, but LED was not available in blue. It was available in amber, in red, in green, but never in blue. And there was a Japanese company that their main business was making phosphors. In fact, we were buying phosphors from them for fluorescent. So the fluorescent tube, that white coating that you see, is actually phosphor that converts UV light into visible light. Anyway, long story short, this company said, if we could develop a blue LED chip, then we can use our phosphors to convert blue to white. And that's exactly what they did. The physicists that worked for them won a Nobel Prize for physics. And they went from being maybe a $50 million business to a multi-billion-dollar business. They're called Nichia Corporation. Anyway, that LED technology more or less killed the light bulb business. Today, if you're building a building, there's almost a commercial building, maybe in a residential, it's a bit different, but in a commercial building or industrial building, there's no more light bulbs. The fixtures come with a circuit board, and there's a bunch of chips on them, and that's what emits the light. And so obviously in the past, when a building, let's say they were building a skyscraper and they needed 10,000 fixtures, they needed at least 10,000 light bulbs. Now there's no more light bulbs that go in the fixtures, and obviously there's no light bulb to burn out, so you miss out on the replacement business. So that pretty much killed the light bulb business. And you can see today that GE, Sylvania, Philips, they're all got out of lighting. You still see the brands because they license their brands, but none of them are in the lighting business anymore. And so we had to obviously pivot. And so in order to do that, we got into the fixture business. Well, I had StanPro already, but the light bulb business had to pivot towards lighting fixtures, which they started to do. And then, fast forward, say from 2010 to 2018, I could just give you statistically what we sold 100% of in 2010. Today we sell 10% of. So 90% of the light bulb business more or less evaporated. And so we had to find other things to do. And so we decided to go into fixtures. So we had now StanPro in fixtures, and we had standard in fixtures, and keeping them separate didn't seem to make too much more sense. So I decided to merge the two together. And at the same time, I decided to acquire other lighting businesses. And so we've done I think 4 acquisitions, 4 acquisitions in the last roughly 4 or 5 years. And now we're a group of lighting businesses. We have architectural lighting business, based in Anjou. We have sort of a luxury brand decorative lighting business based in the Chabanel area. And then we have we bought another business in Ontario that's in industrial and emergency lighting. And we have our two original businesses that are based here in one is in Dorval, one is in Saint Laurent. And combined, as a group, we're about over 500 employees. And in terms of size, we would be in Canada, we would be the second largest, no, we'd be the third largest lighting group in Canada. And we're the only Canadian independent private company in our industry. So as a proud Canadian, I'm thrilled with that. So that's our evolution, to date, and we're continuing to grow strategically, organically, and through acquisition. And so that's my story. If anyone has any questions, I'll take them, and then I'm going to introduce Justine and Tasso.
Yeah, David, first of all, it was a great introduction. I'm amazed at the growth of your company. To what extent are you affected or impacted by newer technology? What if a new technology comes in and supersedes what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, so typically you have a chance to, what I find in business is nothing really, well, except for a pandemic, really creeps up on you and then, and it's there. So I think that pandemic was really maybe the first time that we really got surprised. Normally you can see it coming. And I think the job as a CEO of a company is really to be exposed, reading, learning, listening, speaking, and get a feel for, where things may be going. So I do a lot of that, and I don't really see, I guess the next big, it's not going to be the light source anymore that's going to change, because when we talk about light sources, we went from incandescent to fluorescent to high intensity discharge to LED. I don't see LED going away, but I think what I do see is a shift in technology towards smart lighting. You see it a lot in the residential market, like with the Philips Hue, and well, if you go to Canadian Tire or Home Depot or whatever, they've got a whole selection of these sort of smart, home lighting fixtures and light bulbs. They change colors, they flash, they can tune them. You can change warm white, cool white. You can control them. And I think, where our focus is much more in commercial and industrial, I believe that our future is going to be moving towards smart lighting in that area. So specifically IoT, or the Internet of Things, where you can, for example, in the pandemic, had this technology been available, groups like Cadillac Fairview or Bentall, or any of these large property managers could have controlled the lighting remotely in all of their buildings, and it could have been monitored. If there was any problems, emails would be sent out to the proper people that this fixture diagnostically looks like it's off, or it's running out of spec. And then there's a lot more, once you have, and all of this is going Bluetooth compatible. So this is where we see it going. We see a huge opportunity in many areas. I don't want to take up the whole discussion today, but there's a ton of things. You could do asset tracking, as an example, in a hospital. If you put an RFID chip on, let's say, a respirator or some other type of equipment, it with the lights, it will know, where everything is. And somebody with a smartphone would be able to, looking for a respirator, it could tell them exactly where it is. You could do Li-Fi, what they call, instead of Wi-Fi, it's Li-Fi. So you could be getting internet, through the lights. You can do indoor global positioning. So you know what GPS is for outdoors, but you have indoor global positioning that you can do. So if you're, say, in a Walmart and you have a Walmart app, it knows, let's say you're in the baby section, and it could tell you, oh, there's a special on Pampers today, or whatever it happens to be. So it's endless what you can do once you enable the fixtures with Bluetooth sensors and radios. So that is where a lot of our focus is in terms of being prepared for tomorrow. Oren, you have a question?
Hey, hi Dave. Yeah, great,
Hi.
great, good. Great story. I knew part of it, but it was great to hear it in a continuous sense. Dave, I got a question for you for like aspiring entrepreneurs. They're out there. If I listened to your story, a lot, a big part of that was you just kind of making rain and just saying, you know what, why don't I just give Canadian Tire a shot and see what can happen from there, and kind of just jump in and see what happens. So I see that story a lot with people when I hear their business stories, and just wanted to see from your point of view, how much was that type of, call it attitude or attribute, kind of necessary for people who might want to start off? Like, a lot of people always find, like, how do I get started? And I would say you just get started. You just go. And I just wanted to know if that was your experience, and is that the way it was a little bit more in the past, and now things are different with the internet and people know more and so on. And do you find that type of approach is still applicable to people who might be wanting to get started in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit. To some it comes naturally, and to others maybe it needs to be developed. But I don't think you can do it without having that spirit, because you become almost like a detective. Like, okay, this door is locked, I'm gonna find another way in. There's always another way, there's always another idea, there's always another approach. And so I think entrepreneurs in general are curious, they're motivated, they're passionate. And I think you have to have some of those attributes, I think, to want to go there. And if you don't really have them sort of naturally, then I think they can be learned as well. So that's I don't know if I answered that properly or not, Oren.
You did. I was just curious to know.
Alrighty. Okay, I'm going to now move to my introduction, except I'm going to be very honest. Justine, I forgot to
It's all right. I'll introduce this then.
For the moment, I don't know what I did with my notes, and I'm not sure where they are. So Tasso, I'll introduce Tasso, and then Tasso can introduce you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So Tasso is a managing director of Richter. Richter is a Canadian, Montreal-based. They're Montreal and Toronto operations. They're very successful accounting firm, but I think accounting firm is really not certainly complete enough a description. I'd say they are really consultants at heart, and of course they do the basic auditing, but they have so much more to them. And in fact, our firm moved to them, I don't know exactly when, but I'm going to say about 4 or 5 years ago. And it started as a very basic relationship, and it grew because I really felt Richter understood the business side and the family side. And I think it was Tasso that said, business and family are entwined, and many times you have to coordinate what you do personally with what you do in business if you have a family business. And so I can say that we've been really pleased with the support and the guidance we've received, and I'm fortunate enough that Tasso is sort of my guy, so I get to actually work with him. I wouldn't say on a daily basis by any means, but when there's a project, and we have our regular huddles every quarter. So I really enjoy the relationship. I think Tasso, what you built is tremendous. I mean, one day you'll have to do a the evolution of Richter, because I think it's super significant, especially I'd say, I don't know the earlier history, but I have to think in the last 10, 15 years, Richter has completely transformed itself. So I'm happy to introduce Tasso, and I'm gonna actually pin you, so we're gonna see you, and I'm gonna pin Justine and Tasso. With
Thank
that,
you.
if
Yeah,
I
with
missed
that intro.
anything, if I
No,
missed
no,
any
you did amazing.
let me know. But you
You
can
didn't.
go ahead and introduce Justine.
Yeah, well, thank you, David. You did an amazing job. I wish most people would describe us as such, because that's how we see ourselves, as we've transformed our business quite a bit over the last 10 years, 10 or 15 years. So you're bang on your timeline. And as David mentioned, I got to meet David about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a point in time when in his life when he was at this inflection point, and not only became a client, but something more than that. And I've taken a very personal interest on staying close with David and helping him through his journey and through these most recent, his own transformation over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's really nice to be part of his journey. So thank you for that intro. On vis-a-vis Justine, so I'd like to introduce everyone to Justine Delail. She's actually one of our youngest partners, made early in her career a partner. She's also quite innovative in her own right, and started working closely with myself and other partners in developing the family office business. And today she runs the family office services area. She's been developing this area, I guess, over the last 7 or 8 years, and has done a tremendous job. And I would even say, go as far as saying that it's one of the fastest growing areas in our firm. And I hope she's put a great presentation together. We worked, she led the charge on this. So hope you all enjoy the presentation in an area that probably will interest most of you, if not all of you, in how families and ultra high net worth families have started to work with some of their advisors, not only in the business side, which you heard a few weeks ago with Alana Geller, but also on the family and the family office side. So without any further ado, I pass it over to Justine. I'll be Vanna on this as well, so I'll pipe in from time to time, but she'll lead the charge on this.
So thank you very much for the introduction, Tasso. Thank you, David, for inviting us today. For actually a topic of passion for Tasso and myself. So I will just, as entrepreneurs have success throughout their journey, they need guidance as well, yes, on the business side, but on the family side as well. And David mentioned that, and it's absolutely true. So I will summarize the topic of by this summary that was sent to you. So we did as an introduction. So as entrepreneurs continue to create wealth through business profits or through the monetization of their value from a capital transaction, they are looking for guidance on how to design, implement, and support their family. The management and oversight of family office wealth requires a range of different skill sets, similar to the support system of any business. We will present the family office ecosystem while highlighting the importance of creating a family governance framework and building a solid financial foundation for the high net worth family. So here, despite the fact that business owners are mostly driven by business, the family interest is an integral part of their entrepreneurial journey. And this is why the integration, alignment, and connection between the business and family interest is so important and key for success. And I believe that's we had some
Yes. So I always say that this picture really reflects not only what we do as a firm, but also the journey of many of the families. And I think you also heard Alana a number of weeks ago refer to the 3 circles and the 4 rooms. And we sort of have simplified this concept and said that you need to look at your business affairs in some ways somewhat differently. Although there's a connectivity between the business and the family interest, there is a difference in how you need to look at those two areas. And we'll spend, the next 30 or 40 minutes sort of going, walking you through that. But there is a connection between the two, and that brings us to the owners, which is really the intersection where we spend a lot of time with such owners who have both family interest and business interest. So.
Here, going back to our main topic, which is the fundamental of family office, we structure it with the 5 W's. So what is a family office? Why and when would you need a family office? Who can design, implement, and support your family office? Where in terms of what should be your structure and setup of your family office? And at the end is the how. We will share with you how we work with families in assisting them in terms of building their family office. So first of all, what is a family office? Family office roots date from the 6th century, where there was a role of managing royal wealth by a king steward. The service evolved into aristocracy, creating the concept of stewardship. The classic notion of a separate entity managing the wealth beyond the family business first came to fruition in Europe, then expanded into the US, and the trend as well extended later on into Latin America, Middle East, and Asia. So actually, we started to see the modern concept of family office with the Morgan family in 1838, when they funded the House of Morgan to handle the family assets. And we then have the famous Rockefeller's family funding their own family office, which they still run as of today. And what is very interesting is the last 30 years have been a very interesting and fast growth in terms of family office because of the wealth creation and the increase of level of complexity towards ultra network families. It will be very interesting to see what will come up in the next years because we'll be living the biggest intergenerational transfer in the story of the world. So it's the relevance of family office will be bigger and bigger. Is the sound better now? You're good? We're good?
Yes, we're good.
I'm very close on my screen. Okay. So this slide here represents a family structure from an asset perspective, which we call a family enterprise. At the top left here, you see the operating business, but you see that family enterprise goes much beyond the operating business. It's all the other assets owned by the families. It can be financial asset, which is portfolio and all the passive investment a family may have. You may have some real estate, some philanthropic asset as well when we talk about donor advised fund or a family foundation. We have the heirloom asset, which is, for example, the cottage of all the emotional value asset for the family, and you have the deferred asset. So in order to illustrate properly how we can situate the family office within the family enterprise, we first take a look at the operating business. In all well-run business, and we started just before the presentation, you need to rely very much on the C-suite level in terms of your executive as the CFO, CEO, and so on. And the C-suite is well supported by a solid infrastructure to handle the operation. It's really the same thing at the family office level, but with a different perspective. Here you see at the family enterprise level, and to run your family office, you still need that level of sophistication at the C-suite level, CFO, CEO, CIO, well supported by operation and finance, but instead of managing the operating business, that team managed the full family enterprise, which is the oversight of all the family assets. You can see here as well that there is a segregation and healthy segregation between the operating business and the family matters, which is also good governance practice as well. So the key elements here is that a family office brings all the pieces together with the potential to integrate all the elements within the family enterprise, while ensuring that the global vision of the family is evolving in the right direction. Continuing on the role of a family office. So first of all, the family office needs to help to establish the vision and value at the family level, to then build, as I mentioned, a proper infrastructure to support the achievement of goals set by the family. It can be short-term and long-term, and as a family as a whole, but as well at the individual level as well. The coordination, integration, and quarterbacking element is very important as well at the family office level, as well as all that risk management and asset protection component, giving a peace of mind to the family. Of course, via this infrastructure, the family office ensure operation around the various assets, produce proper reporting, establish strategy, and as well ensure execution of the various plans dictated by the family. At the end of the day, the ultimate goal of a family office is to ensure intergenerational success, whatever it means for any family. We just have the family enterprise, which is a structure on the asset perspective level of a family. This illustration shows all the areas that a family office needs to cover. They are a lot and they are more relevant at different times within the family enterprise journey, but you can see here that there are some immediate needs and some long-term needs. In terms of the immediate needs, you have the, to be well-structured, wealth, tax, compliance, financial support, operation, lifestyle management, reporting, etc. And from the list of areas here, in terms of the long-term needs of the family, you may have estate planning, education, stewardship, continuity, etc.
So I would also say, I guess what the comment I would say over the last 3 or 4 slides that Justine just presented is, as she mentioned, you need a C-suite of people, both at the business level and at the family level, but the skill sets are quite different. So although you sort of think about a CFO can probably at the business level maybe handle things at the family level, the skill set is quite different when you look at what a CFO at a business level does versus at the family level. Same applies at the COO and other key areas. So I think that's important. And it's, I guess, illustrated in some ways by the description around this circle, some of the areas that a family office, CFO, CIO, or COO would need to take care of.
So from the what is a family office, we'll go to why you would need a family office. And here I go back to the 2-circle model that we discussed before. It goes back to, it's all about the alignment of the family interests vis-a-vis their ownership. And it can be at the operating business level, but it can also be at passive asset level. It's all about aligning ownership and family interests. There are many advantages in formalizing your family office. First of all, it offers a holistic and integrated solution that is highly customized for families. Having a family office running all the family affairs also creates freedom and peace of mind for the family members. There are also many advantages to segregate the business affair and the family affairs, and Tasso just touched on it in terms of, first of all, the skill set, but it also adds a level of confidentiality as well. It's good governance practice, and there is that level of discretion towards the family affair that gives additional comfort to the family, and as well the fact that the family would have dedicated resource to handle their affair bring a level of control and accountability towards as well the performance on their on their family matters. As I mentioned as well, a family office is often really a bespoke and customized approach, which bring the family at a high level of sophistication in terms of the structure. I go back to the main purpose of why a family office. It's all about ensuring that intergenerational success. And it's all about making sure that the family achieves its long-term vision for the family. And we'll touch a little bit on that. Speaking of that intergenerational success, this illustration shows the main failure factors towards wealth transfer. And when you look at the study made, only 3% of intergenerational wealth transfer failure is due to a poor tax and financial planning. What it means is that the main component for success is communication, trust, prepared ears, and a purpose towards the family. And a family office exactly create that framework to foster and reinforce those elements.
It's funny, I find this slide very interesting because I guess as more financial people, historically, people would come to us for proper structuring, so more tax and financial planning as opposed to some of the, call it the more softer areas, which is more communication and trust building within the family members, which is now becoming a bigger part of our business as we're sort of advising a lot of the families on intergenerational transfer.
And it's true that so people put a lot of energy and effort on actually preparing the will, the structure for the next generation, but not enough focus that actually put in terms of making sure to prepare the next generation and that they understand their level of responsibility towards that. And it's actually very important, and this is what we recommend to the families who work with, to build a family roadmap and understand that with wealth come responsibility towards, yes, the next generation, towards the community, and also towards each other as family members. We highly recommend the family to align first on their vision and values, formally defining, communicating, and putting in writing. Vision and value will help the family to refer to it when there is harder time or difficult decision have to be made. A family also can go a step further and formalize a family charter, which is essentially a document that is similar to a shareholder agreement, and it formalizes key provision to ensure to keep harmony and define rules within the family towards a couple of key elements such as philanthropy, compensation, spouse involvement, asset protection, investment decision, conflict resolution mechanism, etc. Another very key component for intergenerational success is all that financial literacy aspect. So the education component is very important to ensure that the family members speak the same language, the same vocabulary towards important matter, and they understand the basic elements of personal finance, wealth, tax, legal, etc. So they recognize and understand that each of their personal decisions has an impact on the family system and a potentially common asset as well. In terms as well of formalizing a governance framework, you can also formalize those family meetings, which help in terms of accountability and achievement of the global strategy of the family. Those meetings can be formal or informal, but we suggest to establish an agenda and track progress around those meetings. And you may want to bring an advisor to facilitate those meetings as well. Those four elements are really at the family level, and I mentioned it before. What is also important when you set up a family office is, yes, making sure that the family office works for the family as a whole, but as well ensure that each of the family members focus on their own individual pursuit and that they can achieve their personal goals. So when do you need a family office? I go back to our comparison with a business, same as for a business, and then family enterprise as different life cycles. And it's important for each business owner to understand where they are at in their entrepreneurial journey So they actually can assess the need of a family office, and depending of the stage, the onboarding or the of the structure may differ. So I will go over briefly the fourth stage, and Tasso can jump in and give me some example as well. But first of all, we have that entrepreneurial stage where effort, energy, focus is all about growing the business and building value. So definitely time, effort, and liquidity are all into the business. It's not necessarily a stage where you would be thinking about formalizing your family office. Here is just a question of thinking eventually to de-risk the business within your family enterprise and getting educated as to what is a family office, same as, for example, you do today. Second stage is that diversification stage, and I mentioned it about de-risking the business. So the first scenario in terms of diversification is once the business is well established, you start accumulating liquidity from dividend over the years. It's one thing. Then you can have a partial divestiture and the full sale of the business. Those three scenarios create a liquidity event, create probably a level of complexity in the structure, and the importance of probably segregating the business and the family affairs. So we really see this stage as an onboarding into how should you set up yourself at the family level. Stage 3 is the wealth creation stage, which is often there is no business operating business anymore. The structure is more passive. Again, we talk about a complex structure with the next generation involved as well. And here, typically, the focus is on family governance, creating wealth, and intergenerational planning. And the last stage is that wealth transition stage, which is the ultimate inflection point for the family, where the family need to decide, are they staying together for the next generation, or they are separating and splitting the assets.
So it's interesting. So just a general comment about these four stages. First of all, in building the slide, which we recently built it helped us sort of communicate to clients who are interested in building their family office at what stage they need to start thinking about it and so on. We've seen clients move from stage 1 to stage 4. One in particular, which I work on closely with Justine, did this in the last 5 years, where their focus was their business. Over the 5-year period, they started to pay dividends and create some liquidity outside. During COVID, they ended up selling their business, and now they're starting to talk about what wealth transition to the next generation will look like. So this can happen very slowly, or it can happen very, very quickly, moving from these 4 stages, which really reflects when people should be thinking about their family office, which is essentially stage 2, and in stage 1, getting more educated and informed about the area.
Thank you, Tasso. And here it's a graph summarizing what we just discussed in terms of what is the stage versus the family office needs. So again, I mentioned the entrepreneurial phase, but you see that it increases over time, and you see the inflection point as to is the family staying together to be stronger, or they split and separate the asset. And it's not linear, because we see it's much more circular, because the family can go back into entrepreneurial stage and phase.
Yeah, we've had clients who actually have gotten into this sort of last stage where they decide to keep some of the assets together and divvy up the rest. So essentially giving them some level of independence by retaining a certain core assets together as a family.
At the end of the day, it's never too early, never too late to consider setting up the structure of a family office. Here are some key factors to consider, and we mentioned it a couple of times so far, that segregation between business and family matters. I talked a lot about that governance aspect, but as well, we see a lot of financing within business and doing the family matters for our clients. And some question is, do they have the proper skill set, as Tasso mentioned? Are they interested in managing all the family affairs? And should they focus on the business, right? So it's all those questions that you may want to consider. As well as the increased value in terms of net worth of the factor, more value, more liquidity as well, and more planning needs to be done. Same as the level of complexity, more it becomes complex, more quarterbacking function you may need. As well as the family dynamic, more there is next generation involved, the spouse, grandchildren, and so on. You need to start thinking about putting in place some sort of a family system and governance framework to keep this harmony and going back to that intergenerational success. And at the end of the day, it's also looking at the importance of integration of the financial ecosystem. More it evolves, again, you have your business advisor, your family advisors. So it can become very busy in terms of your ecosystem. So should you have an entity centralizing all your family matters? Then is who can design, implement, and support your family office. We mentioned it is, the approach that we recommend is, first of all, you need to look at what would be the role more at the strategic level that you need to define. So we pointed out, at the CEO, CFO level, which is more operations and finance. The CIO role is more about the chief investment officer role. Then you look at what you need in terms of tax and legal role, and then at the strategic, global strategy level. Once you define exactly what you need at this level, this is where you can see who could support in terms of infrastructure, those key roles within your family office. And we're not saying that you need a full-time position in each of them. You may need a portion of all those roles and a portion of a bookkeeper, a portion of an executive assistant, and so on. But once you map this is where you can see how you will structure it. And it goes back here about the where. In terms of the structure, is which role will you want to have in-house under your payroll and under your management, versus which role would you like to have outsourced. This slide and this illustration is very busy, but it shows you that every solution and is unique, because every family need is unique. But we have some family who decide to have their full family office in-house, such as Claridge's, and some family who decide to actually outsource all their function to a firm. And this is very unique to each family, but while building it, this is the spectrum that we use often when we assist families.
It's funny, we built this slide a few years ago because we had quite a few families who came to a lot of wealth, and we're trying to figure out, well, we want to set up a family office, but we don't know what we want to build or how to build it. And we prepared this because we actually told them it's not a one-size-fits-all. You can decide to in-house some of the areas or outsource some of these areas. And it's just a question of what works for you or not. We've had families who built it on their own and had a full family office, are now dismantling it because they find it very difficult to deal with the payroll and sort of managing people. And they prefer to outsource it and have others such as ourselves manage the talent and the requirements as opposed to themselves. Although wealth will determine some of the spectrum and gives you more options. Obviously, if you're having 20 or 30 or 40 million dollars, it's a lot of wealth, but you don't want to build an infrastructure that costs you, $3 or $4 million a year. So you're probably better off outsourcing most of the services. Although we have some ultra high net worth people, call it centimillionaires, and they choose to outsource a lot of their services, in particular, as this illustration shows. So a good document to dialogue around with some of the people who are looking to set up a family office.
Absolutely. So we're talking about the role and the structure, and now is the cost of running your family office. It's more an investment of running your family office. And at the end, it's more, this illustration is more to show you that you have to look at some benchmark in the industry regarding 3 buckets. Whatever is related to your wealth management, the benchmark cost should be typically a percentage of asset under management. Whatever is related to your operation, finance, and compliance of your family office, you have to look at it as in what would be overhead to handle a full team running your affair. And typically, again, it's an annual flat fee basis. And any specialty area, such as having a tax expert and so on, this is the conventional hourly fee basis. So while you define your role, what you want to insource and outsource, in terms of budgeting and understanding what should be your annual cost, you should separate in those three buckets. Then is the how, and we'll touch a little bit on our approach as to building a family office. Just in terms of our view, in terms of the market, there are three categories. The first one are the single family office, and I touched on it a little before, is that one family developing their own single family office. Therefore, it's an absolute bespoke and personalized solution for them. An example is like a Claridge. Then we have, we see more and more accounting firms or leveraging on their field of expertise, and they're creating a new line of service to support ultra network families more and more, and playing that fair. And the other category we see in the market is wealth management firms that focus on wealth creation. So though in the industry, which we see those three categories, who could say that they are running their family office. In our approach, we're able to integrate those three pillars and try and deliver an experience of a single family office to the families we work with. We're leveraging on our expertise within our financial advisory firm, and also we have a core focus as well on wealth management. And I will let Tasso explain how we build and construct a family office solution for client in terms of design, implementation, and support.
Yeah, so when clients typically come to us to set up a family office, again, they've come either through a liquidity or they've paid a lot of dividends and have created liquidity outside their operating business. We've broken it out into three areas. We call it the design phase, and the implementation, and ultimately the support. The design phase is really the discovery stage, where we're actually spending a fair amount of time trying to understand where the family is at today on a whole array of things, whether it's wealth, whether it's their governance documents, whatever information they have. We need to take stock of where the family is. Maybe just then go to the next slide. And that's really just that current state situation. Then what we try to do is establish where the family would like to be. And that's really the establishing a future state, going out 5 or 10 years and saying, if the family would like to create a certain amount of wealth, if the family sort of sees themselves structured in this way on a go-forward basis, vis-a-vis how they want to interact and so on, we create that future state. Ultimately, we bridge that and determine what it will take for the family to get there, whether it's in net worth or otherwise, and we ultimately create a plan to get there. The implementation stage is ultimately the creation of all the governance and documents that will ultimately support precisely that, and it can include a whole array of things, as you see around this, whether it's matrimonial, trust structures, boards, whether board of advisors or fiduciary board, a family charter is just then talked about, the wills, the power mandates and power of attorneys, shareholders agreement if they're in a corporate structure or in a structure, as well as a compensation system for family members. And then finally, we ultimately set up a support system, which in many cases, they ask us to either fully support or partially support their family office, vis-a-vis their wealth or their governance, some of the tax and estate, philanthropy, risk management, or cybersecurity, or entrepreneurial real estate, or business advisory. So this is our approach in helping clients establish their family office, and we find it, they find it quite useful, as many of them really don't understand the area. They just heard about it and they understand they have a lot of wealth and require a lot of guidance and support in this area.
Can you, Tasso, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you, in sort of layperson terms, explain a little bit more about the family charter? Like what is,
yeah.
like as quickly as possible?
Yeah, sure. It's we're at the end of the presentation, so if there's any other questions as well, so happy to take them on. Family charter, as Justine mentioned, it's similar to a shareholders agreement, but it really goes up more at the family level. It's really a document that is designed to be a beacon for the family and deals with family matters. So how will the family, what are the values of the family? How does a family want to interact with one another? What are the rules of conduct for the family? Meaning that, if a family comes across an investment, must they bring that investment to all family members, or are they free to do whatever they want? It deals with a whole array of things, always dealing with the family, as opposed to how they will conduct themselves as, call it, shareholders of a business, because usually a shareholders agreement governs how a family would deal with their ownership rights around the business. This deals with more their interaction amongst themselves as family members, but how it connects to their wealth or philanthropy. It can deal with philanthropy, I think Justine mentioned earlier. It touches on a whole array of areas, and you see a lot of high net worth and ultra high net worth families wanting to put documents like that in place because it helps them refer back to it, and especially when there's conflict. It also, I think Justine also mentioned the conflict resolution process. Like what happens if there is in fact conflict amongst the family members? What is a mechanism in dealing with conflict resolution? Justine, do you want to add anything to that?
This compensation, spouse involvement as well.
Spousal involvement. Yeah.
The involvement of the next generation in the family business too. The various areas.
Yeah, I think so. Can I
Sure,
say,
absolutely.
Okay.
Jump right in.
I don't want to interrupt. So I think I have, as you know, I have four young kids in their teenage years, between 13 and 19, and so one thing that was very important to me, and just 1 second, I'm just going to let somebody in. Yeah, important to myself and my late sister, my mom, my dad, my brother, is really around family harmony, and I think we worked really, really hard to make sure that we had a good relationship, an open relationship, and we really were and continue to be very successful in avoiding any type of conflict, because I think we've always put the family ahead of the business. And so one of my fears is, when I'm not here anymore, how do I best, try to protect that family harmony as kids, get married, and their husbands and wives and cousins and, so on and so forth. So, and I think a little bit about this, Ted Rogers, and how he set things up. It was almost felt like he set things up for a fight to happen, as opposed to set things up for harmony. So,
I was about to say that, David, is that I know a little bit about the situation, and I think to your words, I think that it was set up precisely for that, and I think it's a lot of lessons learned, and unfortunate for, given his success, how things were ultimately set up wasn't really for success. And I think it's not only the document, it's how people interact, how you set up the forum where people do have the freedom to express themselves, and finding safe places on communication and things of that nature. And charters are becoming, because that's where most of this is all reflected, as opposed to just words that get lost sometimes.
yeah, I could see that. Very interesting, this charter, this sort of concept of a family charter. I think that's, yeah.
We've been helping families more and more in this area. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, Elan. Oh, we got to turn him on.
You just unmute yourself.
So in extension of what David's saying, I've seen several families destroy themselves and the siblings not speak, and money's just ruined them. And it led me to write a very complex will with sides that have got nothing to do with the law, but instructions on how to behave and what happens if there's conflict, and my children, none of my children are married, but it was part of it was about what happens with the spouses and intervention of spouses and how to behave. And I was wondering whether you'd like to touch in that, because I found that spouses, it's an area we can't control. We're not going to be here, and we know that our children are going to be influenced by their spouses. That's a fact.
Yes. So what I found, and I'll let Justin speak after, but what I found is through this process of creating a forum where spouses are invited. So I sit on a board of a very high profile family, and the family spouses are brought in. They're not just left out of the process. And that's important, to find forums where they can find a place for the spouses to come in and be part of it, as opposed to being excluded from that process completely. And that's usually done at what they call the family council, where a lot of these spouses are brought in and at least exposed to some of the family matters and the family, call it enterprise, which includes philanthropy and where spouses can play a role outside of the business itself or the wealth. So there are other areas where some of the spouses can play a role.
You're right, in a sense, they come with different background, different values, so it adds into the mix of the full family dynamic. It's all about defining their role and whatever it means for every family and their place. But they need to have a place, to Pascal's point. That's
Interesting. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. Well,
Thank you.
I enjoyed that. That was great. I hope everyone else did as well. And
Hopefully we've left you with some thoughts about sort of how families should be structured or should be dealing with some of their affairs outside of the business itself. And it is a new area, and you'll be hearing more and more about it as a lot of people are looking at this. It used to be, what I always say, it used to be sexy for ultra high net worth people to own their own planes, and nowadays it's more sexy to own your own family office or create your own family office. You're seeing it more and more in the market today.
yeah, it's it really given the correct circumstances, it makes a ton of sense. So
Yeah.
But look, I want to thank you again. I mean,
My pleasure.
you guys are super
Thank
busy.
you, everyone, for having us.
Yeah, it was great. I really appreciated that. Justine, you're excellent, and Tasso, as usual,
So, thank
very
you.
knowledgeable and wise. And to all our guests, thank you so much for taking time on a beautiful, I'm looking outside, blue sky, warm, sunny day to be on Zoom. So thank you so much. I do want to, and just to say, we really appreciate your support, Richter support, in sort of enlightening, our guests here, and this is going to be recorded, and so we'll be sharing the recording in due course, and hopefully many more people will see it over time. And that's it.
I
So
appreciate it. Thank you.
David,
Oh,
I have
Albert.
a burning question. Do you work out of your family office, or do you work out of your office?
That's a good question. So we've been at the office actually in general for most of the time. Unfortunately, I just got COVID, so I'm at the tail end of it. Otherwise, we actually work from the office, office these days.
David?
yeah, are you asking me? I mean,
Oh,
I think family office is not actually a physical office, but for me, I work, well, you typically see me at my office. I think
always see you at that office. So I never know whether it's home or the office.
no, this is actually my office, my work office, and I think probably stayed home like March, April in 2020, maybe even May. I think 2 or 3 months was about the most I could take of not being, I mean, going for walks and exercise. It was actually great, but I was thinking, you know, man, I haven't used my Waze, and like I forgot how to use my Waze. I don't even need Waze because there's no traffic on the roads. So, but I find it's a good, just in general, I think it's healthy to have a separation. You know, if you're home all day, you know, the transition from going to the office or kids going to school, like kids were online at home. My wife was working at home. I was working at home. So some of it was great. You get to have lunch together and enjoy each other. But, you know, I think a few months for me was enough, and I was happy to go to the office. Even though, to be honest, our office has been mostly empty and still is mostly empty. But again, like, yeah, so thank you again very much. And
Appreciate it.
I'll be working on doing another series, I guess in the fall. And so stay tuned, as they say, and hope to see you. Everyone enjoy your summer, and best wishes to all. And thank you again to Tasso and Justine.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank
Owen.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing
you.
this. It's an amazing.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.